Marcus Chun adjusted his tie for the third time as he stood outside the coffee shop, watching through the glass windows. His daughter Emma had insisted he needed to get back out there after 3 years of single parenthood, and somehow that had led to him signing up for an interspecies dating app. The Galactic Council's cultural exchange program had made such connections possible, though Marcus still felt awkward about the whole thing. The woman he was meeting, Zara, had been honest in her profile about being Ketheri, one of the newer species to join the galactic community. Her messages had been thoughtful and funny, and she seemed genuinely interested in human culture. What she hadn't mentioned was anything about mobility aids. Marcus checked his watch again. She was already 10 minutes late, which wasn't unusual for first dates, but his nerves were getting the better of him. He'd almost canceled twice, worried about how Emma would react if this went well, worried about whether he was ready, worried about whether dating an alien was just setting himself up for complications he didn't need. Then he saw her. Zara was taller than he'd expected, nearly 6 feet, with the distinctive blue-tinted skin and elegant features of the Ketheri. Her hair was a deep purple-black that seemed to shimmer under the afternoon sun, and her eyes were large and expressive, a color somewhere between silver and gold. She moved with a grace that was unmistakably alien. But what caught Marcus's attention immediately were the devices supporting her legs. They weren't exactly crutches in the human sense. They looked more like sleek, technological supports that extended from her forearms to points of contact with the ground. They were clearly functional, helping her walk, but they were also beautiful in their own way, crafted from what looked like polished metal with soft blue lights that pulsed gently with each step. Marcus realized he was staring and quickly looked away, then back again as she approached the coffee shop entrance. She paused just outside the door, and he could see her taking a deep breath, her expression shifting from confident to uncertain. That moment of vulnerability made her seem more real, more relatable, despite the obvious differences between their species. He moved toward the door to meet her, offering a smile he hoped looked more confident than he felt. "Zara, Marcus." Her voice had a musical quality to it, with just a hint of an accent he couldn't place. "I'm sorry I'm late. I had some trouble with the transport system. Human public transportation is not designed with my needs in mind." "No problem at all," Marcus said, meaning it. "I'm just glad you made it." They stood there for a moment, the awkwardness of first meetings amplified by the fact that they were quite literally from different worlds. Marcus found himself glancing at her mobility aids again, curious but not wanting to be rude. Zara noticed his glance, and her expression tightened slightly. "They're medical supports," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "A condition I was born with. It affects the bone density in my lower legs." "They look incredibly sophisticated," Marcus replied honestly. "Much more advanced than anything I've seen." Zara studied his face, clearly trying to read his reaction. "Most humans I've encountered find them unusual. Some find them off-putting." Marcus felt a surge of irritation on her behalf. "Then, those humans are idiots." The bluntness of his response seemed to surprise her, and for the first time since she'd arrived, her smile looked genuine. "That's refreshingly direct. My daughter would tell you I have no filter," Marcus said, opening the coffee shop door for her. "She's probably right." As they entered the coffee shop, Marcus noticed how Zara navigated the space. She was clearly experienced with her mobility aids, moving efficiently around tables and chairs, but he also noticed how some of the other patrons stared. A few looked curious, others seemed uncomfortable, and a couple were openly gawking. Zara's jaw tightened slightly as they made their way to a corner table, and Marcus felt another flash of anger at the rudeness of strangers. He'd experienced a share of judgment as a single father, people assuming he was somehow less capable or responsible than a married parent, but he imagined the scrutiny Zara faced was far more intense and constant. "Is this okay?" he asked, indicating a table near the window. "Perfect," she said, settling into her chair with fluid grace. Her mobility aids folded in a way that allowed her to sit normally, the technology apparently designed for maximum discretion and function. Marcus went to order their drinks, returning with coffee for himself and something called thermal tea that Zara had requested. As he sat down, he found himself studying her face, trying to read the mix of emotions he saw there. "You're wondering why I didn't mention them in my profile," Zara said, her tone matter of fact. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks at being so easily read. "I was wondering, yes. But not in the way you might think." "Oh, I was wondering if you'd had bad experiences before. With dates, I mean. If that's why you didn't mention them." Zara's expression softened slightly. "You're more perceptive than most humans I've met." "My daughter says I overthink everything," Marcus admitted. "She's probably right about that, too." "Tell me about your daughter," Zara said, clearly wanting to change the subject. Marcus's face lit up immediately. "Emma. She's 8, and she's absolutely fearless. Smarter than I am, definitely more socially skilled. She's the one who convinced me to try dating again. She sounds wonderful." "What's she like?" "She's curious about everything. Last week she decided she wanted to learn Ketheri because she thought it would be cool to speak an alien language. She's been practicing with language apps and watching Ketheri films with subtitles." Zara's eyes widened in surprise. "That's remarkable. Most human children find our language quite difficult." "Emma doesn't believe in things being too difficult," Marcus said with obvious pride. "She just believes in working harder until she figures it out. A trait she clearly inherited from her father," Zara observed. Marcus laughed. "I wish." "No, Emma gets her determination from her mother. I'm more the worry about everything type." He paused, realizing he'd mentioned his late wife without thinking about it. The conversation suddenly felt heavier, more complicated. "She passed away 3 years ago," he said quietly. "Cancer." Zara's expression became gentle, understanding. "I'm sorry. That must have been incredibly difficult." It is. But Emma needed me to figure out how to keep going, so I did." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their drinks. Marcus found himself studying Zara's face again, noting the way her expressions seemed more subtle than human ones, but somehow more expressive at the same time. "Can I ask about your family?" he said finally. "My parents live on Kether Prime still. I have 2 siblings, both younger. I came to Earth for work initially, but I've stayed because I find human culture fascinating." "What kind of work do you do?" "Biomechanical engineering. I design medical devices, actually, mobility aids, prosthetics, that sort of thing." Marcus felt a moment of understanding click into place. "Is that why your supports look so advanced?" Zara smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "I may have had some input into the design, yes. It's amazing how much better medical devices can be when they're designed by someone who actually uses them. I imagine that makes a huge difference." "It does. Most medical equipment is designed by people who think of it as a problem to solve rather than as something that becomes part of your daily life. They focus on function over form, on medical necessity over personal dignity." Marcus nodded, thinking about his own experiences with Emma's medical needs when she'd broken her arm the previous year. Even something as simple as a cast had been designed with no thought to how an 8-year-old girl might feel about wearing it for 6 weeks. "Your supports are beautiful," he said, meaning it. "They look like art as much as medical equipment." Zara's cheeks darkened slightly. What Marcus assumed was the Ketheri equivalent of blushing. "Thank you. That means more to me than you might realize." "Why?" "Because most people either ignore them completely or treat them like there's something shameful that should be hidden. Very few people see them as they are, which is part of who I am. Extensions of my body that allow me to move through the world. They're not a flaw or a limitation any more than your shoes are." Marcus considered this, understanding dawning on him. "But people treat them like they are. People treat them like they make me broken, like they make me less capable, less attractive, less worthy of consideration." The bitterness in her voice was subtle but unmistakable, and Marcus felt another surge of anger on her behalf. He thought about Emma, about how fiercely protective he felt when anyone suggested she couldn't do something because she was just a kid, and he imagined that protectiveness amplified by a factor of 10. "Those people are wrong," he said simply. "Are they?" Zara asked, her voice soft but challenging. Because you're the first person I've met through dating apps who hasn't found an excuse to end the date early once they saw me in person. The statement hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stared at her, seeing the vulnerability she was trying to hide behind her matter-of-fact tone, and felt something shift inside his chest. Then, those people were cowards and idiots, he said firmly, and they didn't deserve to be here with you. Zara studied his face for a long moment, her silver gold eyes searching for something. You mean that? I absolutely mean that. Why? The question was simple, but Marcus sensed it carried enormous weight for her. He thought about his answer carefully, wanting to be honest without being patronizing. Because in the 20 minutes I've been talking to you, you've been more interesting, more thoughtful, and more genuine than anyone I've met in the past 3 years, he said. Because you're brilliant and beautiful and funny, and the fact that you need mobility aids doesn't change any of that. Because anyone who can't see past a piece of medical equipment to the person using it isn't worth your time. Zara was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the table surface. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I wasn't sure I should come today, she admitted. I almost canceled twice. I'm really glad you didn't. So am I. They spent the next hour talking about everything and nothing. Zara told him about her work, about the challenges of adapting alien technology for human use, about her love of Earth's music. Marcus talked about his job as a software engineer, about the joys and terrors of single parenthood, about his attempts to learn to cook something other than mac and cheese for Emma. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus found himself completely absorbed in their conversation. Zara was quick-witted and insightful, with a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard. She asked thoughtful questions about his life and seemed genuinely interested in his answers. Most importantly, she seemed to understand the weight of responsibility he carried as a single parent without making him feel judged for it. I should probably head home, Marcus said eventually, glancing at his watch. Emma will be back from her friend's house soon, and she'll want to hear all about this. You're going to tell her about me? If you don't mind. Emma has opinions about my social life, and she'll be insufferable if I try to keep secrets. Zara laughed, a sound like silver bells. I'd like to meet her someday, if this goes well. It is going well, Marcus said without hesitation. At least I think it is. It is, Zara confirmed. Would you like to do this again? Absolutely. When? Are you free this weekend? There's a Kethari cultural exhibition at the Science Museum. I thought you might find it interesting. Marcus grinned. Emma would never forgive me if I went to that without her. Would you mind if she came along? Zara's expression brightened. I'd love to meet her. As they prepared to leave, Marcus watched Zara gather her things and adjust her mobility aids with practiced efficiency. He found himself thinking about courage, about the bravery it must take to put yourself out there when you know you'll face judgment and rejection. He thought about Emma, about the lessons he wanted to teach her about seeing people as they really were rather than focusing on surface differences. Zara, he said as they stood outside the coffee shop. Yes. Thank you for taking a chance on me. She smiled, and this time was radiant. Thank you for being worth the chance. As Marcus walked home, he found himself looking forward to Saturday with an enthusiasm he hadn't felt about anything in years. More than that, he found himself looking forward to introducing Emma to someone who might teach her something about resilience, about innovation, about the beauty that could be found in adapting to the world rather than expecting the world to adapt to you. He had a feeling this was the beginning of something important, something that would change both his life and Emma's in ways he couldn't yet imagine. For the first time in 3 years, that prospect didn't terrify him. Instead, it filled him with hope. Saturday morning arrived with Emma bouncing on Marcus's bed at what felt like dawn, but was actually 8:30. She'd been asking questions about Zara nonstop since Marcus had told her about their coffee date, ranging from the practical, does she really have blue skin, to the profound, does it hurt when people stare at her, to the utterly 8-year-old, can she do magic? Dad, we need to leave early so we can see everything, Emma announced, already dressed in her favorite space-themed t-shirt and the jeans she considered her meeting new people outfit. I looked up the exhibition online, and there's 17 different interactive displays, plus a real Kethri spacecraft. Plus, they have samples of Kethri art and music and food. Marcus groaned and pulled a pillow over his head. Emma, we don't need to be there when they open. Zara said she'd meet us at 10:30. But what if there are crowds? What if we can't see everything? What if she wants to leave early because her legs hurt? The last question made Marcus sit up and look at his daughter seriously. Emma, what do you know about Zara's mobility aids? Emma flopped down on the bed, suddenly serious. I researched it after you told me. Kethri can have a condition that affects their bone density. It's genetic, and it means their bones don't grow as strong as they should in their lower legs. Some of them need help walking. Marcus felt a familiar surge of pride in his daughter's thoroughness, mixed with concern about her tendency to dive deep into topics that worried her. And what did you learn about how we should treat people who use mobility aids? The same way we treat everyone else, Emma said promptly. Don't stare, don't ask personal medical questions unless they bring it up first, and don't try to help unless they ask for help. Exactly right. Anything else? Emma chewed her lip the way she did when she was thinking hard about something. Is she nice? She's very nice. She's smart and funny, and she seemed excited about meeting you. Good, because if she's not nice to you, I'll tell her to go away. Marcus laughed despite himself. Emma, you can't tell adults to go away. I can if they're mean to my dad. The fierce protectiveness in his daughter's voice reminded Marcus so much of her mother that his chest tightened. Sarah had been the same way, ready to defend the people she cared about without hesitation. It was one of the things he'd loved most about her, and seeing that same quality in Emma always made him feel like Sarah was still with them in some way. I don't think that will be necessary, he said gently, but I appreciate the thought. They arrived at the Science Museum at exactly 10:30 to find Zara waiting near the entrance. She was wearing what Marcus assumed was traditional Kethri clothing, a flowing tunic in deep blue with intricate silver embroidery, and her mobility aids seemed to complement the outfit perfectly. She looked beautiful and elegant, and Marcus felt a flutter of nervousness about introducing her to Emma. Emma, however, had no such hesitations. She walked right up to Zara with the confidence that only 8-year-olds could muster. Hi, I'm Emma, she announced. Dad says you're from space. Zara's face lit up with genuine delight. Hello, Emma. I'm Zara, and yes, I suppose I am from space. Though we prefer to say I'm from Kether Prime. Is it far away? Very far. It takes about 6 months to travel here, even with the fastest ships. Emma's eyes widened. That's like going to Australia, except a million times further. That's actually a very good comparison, Zara said, clearly impressed. Have you been to Australia? No, but I want to. Dad says maybe when I'm older we can take a really long vacation and see the kangaroos. Marcus watched the interaction with growing amazement. Emma was treating Zara exactly the way she treated any other adult, with curiosity and respect, but no particular awe or awkwardness. Zara, for her part, was talking to Emma like she was a person rather than a child, taking her questions seriously and giving thoughtful answers. Should we go in? Marcus suggested. I'm curious to see what a Kethri cultural exhibition looks like. The museum had done an impressive job with the exhibition. The main hall had been transformed to showcase different aspects of Kethri society, from their advanced biotechnology to their complex musical traditions. What struck Marcus immediately was how different Kethri cultures seemed from human stereotypes about alien civilizations. Most humans expect us to be either hyper-advanced and emotionless or primitive and savage, Zara explained as they walked through the first section. In reality, we're much more like you than most people realize. We have art, music, literature. We fall in love. We worry about our children. We struggle with the same fundamental questions about meaning and purpose. Emma was studying a display about Kethri family structures with intense concentration. Do you have big families or small families? It varies like with humans. I have 2 younger siblings, which is fairly typical. Some families are larger, some smaller. Do you miss them? The question was simple, but Marcus could see it hit Zara in an unexpected way. Her expression became soft and a little sad. I do miss them, she admitted. Especially my sister. She's about your age, actually. Her name is Kira, and she's very curious about everything, like you are. Does she know about Earth? I tell her stories about the things I see here. She's particularly fascinated by human music. Kethri music is very different from yours. Can you show us? Emma asked eagerly. Zara looked around and spotted an interactive display that allowed visitors to experience Kethri musical instruments. She led them over to it, moving through the crowds with ease despite the busy museum environment. Kethri music is based on harmonic frequencies that resonate with our physiology, she explained, touching the display to activate it. It's supposed to be very relaxing. The sound that emerged was unlike anything Marcus had ever heard. It was musical, but not in any way he could categorize. The notes seemed to flow into each other, creating patterns that were both complex and soothing. It was beautiful, but alien in a way that reminded him just how far from home Zara really was. Emma listened with her head tilted, her expression thoughtful. It sounds like water, she said finally, like a really pretty stream. Zara's face lit up with delight. That's exactly what it's supposed to sound like. You have a very good ear. Can you play any instruments? A few. I brought my resonance harp with me to Earth, though I don't get many chances to play it. Maybe you could play for us sometime, Emma suggested with the casual assumption of friendship that children specialized in. I would love that, Zara said, and Marcus could tell she meant it. They spent the next 2 hours exploring the exhibition together, and Marcus found himself watching Emma and Zara interact with growing wonder. Emma asked 1,000 questions, ranging from practical, how do you eat human food if your stomach is different, to philosophical, do you believe in God but like a different God than ours, to utterly random, have you ever seen a purple elephant? Zara answered every question with patience and thoughtfulness, never talking down to Emma or dismissing her curiosity as childish. She seemed genuinely delighted by Emma's enthusiasm and quick understanding of complex concepts. What impressed Marcus most was how Emma treated Zara's mobility aids. After the first few minutes, she seemed to forget about them entirely, focusing instead on Zara as a person. When they encountered a set of stairs to reach a second-level display, Emma simply asked, "Is there an elevator?" without making a big deal of it or treating it like an imposition. "You're very considerate," Zara told Emma as they waited for the elevator. "Dad says we should always think about how to make things easier for people, not harder," Emma replied matter-of-factly. "Your dad is a very wise man. He's pretty smart, I guess. He's not as smart as Mom was, though. She was a scientist." Marcus felt his chest tighten, the way it always did when Emma mentioned Sarah, so casually. 3 years later, and it still caught him off guard sometimes. "What kind of scientist was she?" Zara asked gently. "She studied cancer cells. She was trying to figure out how to make them stop growing. She almost figured it out too, but then she got sick before she could finish." The matter-of-fact way Emma stated this always broke Marcus's heart. She'd been 5 when Sarah died, old enough to understand the basics, but too young to fully grasp the cruel irony of a cancer researcher dying of a disease she'd dedicated her life to fighting. "That must have been very hard for both of you," Zara said, her voice full of genuine sympathy. "It was, but Dad says Mom would want us to keep being happy and learning new things, so that's what we do. She sounds like she was a wonderful mother. She was. She would have liked you, I think. She always said the best people were the ones who made the world more interesting." Marcus saw Zara's eyes brighten with unshed tears, and he felt something shift in his chest. There was something about the way she looked at Emma, with such genuine affection and respect, that made him realize how much he'd been hoping for this moment to go well. "I would have liked to meet her," Zara said softly. They reached the spacecraft display, which turned out to be a real Kethri transport vessel that had been converted into an interactive experience. Emma was immediately fascinated by the technology, asking detailed questions about how everything worked. "Human spacecraft are very different from ours," Zara explained as they explored the ship's interior. "You focus on power and speed. We focus on efficiency and sustainability. Which is better? Emma asked. Neither is better or worse, just different. Humans build things to conquer challenges. We build things to work in harmony with them. Marcus found himself thinking about this distinction as they continued through the ship. He noticed it in Zara's mobility aids, too. Where human medical devices often seem to fight against the body's limitations, hers seemed to work with them, enhancing her natural movement rather than replacing it. Is that why your walking aids look so different from human ones? Emma asked, echoing Marcus's thoughts with her usual uncanny ability to cut straight to the heart of things. Zara smiled. Exactly. Human medical devices are often designed to hide or overcome disability. Ours are designed to integrate with it, to make it part of who we are rather than something we have to struggle against. That makes more sense, Emma said thoughtfully. Like, why would you want to pretend you're something you're not? Exactly. Marcus watched this exchange with growing amazement. Emma had grasped in a few minutes what it had taken him years to understand about the difference between accommodation and integration, between seeing disability as a problem to be solved and seeing it as a part of human diversity. They ended their museum visit in the gift shop, where Emma became fascinated by a collection of Ketheri children's books. The illustrations were beautiful, depicting Ketheri families and communities in ways that emphasize cooperation and harmony. Could you help me pick one out? Emma asked Zara. I want to practice reading Ketheri, and Dad doesn't know which ones are good for beginners. Zara spent 20 minutes helping Emma choose a book, explaining the differences between traditional Ketheri script and the simplified version designed for children learning to read. She even wrote Emma's name in Ketheri characters on a piece of paper, which Emma treasured like it was made of gold. Thank you, Marcus said as they prepared to leave the museum. This was amazing. Emma's going to be talking about this for weeks. Thank you for including me, Zara replied. Emma is remarkable. You're raising an exceptional human being. Emma, who had been examining her Ketheri book, looked up at this. Are you going to keep dating my dad? Emma. Marcus felt his face turn red. What? It's a reasonable question. Zara laughed, the sound bright and musical. I would very much like to keep dating your dad, if he wants to keep dating me. Good, Emma said with satisfaction. Because I like you, and I think you make Dad happy. Marcus looked at Zara, seeing the genuine joy in her expression, and felt something settle into place in his chest. I would very much like to keep dating you too. Excellent, Emma announced. Now, can we get ice cream? All this walking around has made me hungry. As they walked to the ice cream shop nearby, Marcus found himself watching Emma and Zara chat about everything from Ketheri children's games to the relative merits of different ice cream flavors. There was an easy comfort between them that spoke to genuine affection rather than politeness, and Marcus realized that this was what he'd been hoping for without even knowing it. Emma needed more than just a father. She needed examples of strong, intelligent women who could show her different ways of being in the world. Sarah had been that for 5 years, but Emma was growing up, facing new challenges and questions that required different perspectives. Zara, with her combination of vulnerability and strength, her refusal to be defined by other people's limitations, and her genuine delight in Emma's curiosity, was exactly the kind of influence Marcus hoped his daughter would have in her life. Dad, Emma said as they sat outside the ice cream shop, working on their various frozen treats. Yeah, when you marry Zara, can I be in the wedding? Marcus nearly choked on his ice cream. Emma, what? I'm just planning ahead. Mom always said it was important to plan ahead. Zara was laughing so hard she couldn't speak, her silver gold eyes bright with tears of mirth. Emma, she managed finally, I think you might be getting a little ahead of yourself. Maybe, Emma said with a shrug. But Dad likes you, and you like him, and you like me, and I like you, so it seems pretty logical. Marcus looked at Zara, seeing his own mixture of embarrassment and possibility reflected in her expression. She's not wrong about the liking part, he said carefully. No, Zara agreed, her voice soft. She's not wrong about that at all. Emma beamed as if she'd successfully solved a complex mathematical equation, which in her 8-year-old mind she probably had. Good. Now, can we go home? I want to show you my room and my collection of space rocks and my telescope." As they walked back to Marcus's car, Emma chattering happily about all the things she wanted to show Zara, Marcus found himself thinking about family, about the different ways it could be formed and reformed. He thought about Sarah, about how proud she would have been of Emma today, how delighted she would have been to see their daughter embracing someone so different from herself with such open-hearted acceptance. He thought about Zara, about the courage it had taken for her to put herself out there in a world that didn't always welcome difference, about the grace with which she'd handled Emma's boundless curiosity and invasive questions. Most of all, he thought about hope, about the possibility that life could surprise you with second chances, with unexpected connections that made everything feel new again. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus allowed himself to believe that their small family might have room to grow. 3 months into their relationship, Marcus was learning that dating someone from an entirely different species came with unexpected challenges. It wasn't the things he'd expected to be difficult, like cultural differences or communication barriers. Zara was remarkably easy to talk to, and her time on Earth had given her a deep understanding of human customs and social cues. The real challenges were more subtle and more frustrating, like the way the hostess at restaurants would automatically assume Zara needed a wheelchair-accessible table without asking, or how servers would direct questions about her order to Marcus instead of speaking to her directly, or the way parents at Emma's school would stare when Zara came to pick her up, whispering among themselves about the alien woman with the crutches. The worst part was how much it bothered Marcus when it didn't seem to bother Zara at all. She navigated these situations with a grace and patience that amazed him, but also made him feel helpless and angry on her behalf. "You don't have to fix every instance of ignorance in the world," Zara told him one evening after he'd gotten into an argument with a clerk at the grocery store who'd insisted on speaking to Marcus instead of acknowledging Zara's presence. "I've been dealing with this my entire life. I'm used to it. But you shouldn't have to be used to it," Marcus said, still fuming as he unpacked their groceries with unnecessary force. "It's not right. No, it's not right. But getting angry at every person who doesn't know better will only exhaust you. Save your energy for the battles that matter." Emma, who had been listening to this conversation from her seat at the kitchen table, where she was supposedly doing homework, looked up with a serious expression that meant she was about to say something profound. "Zara's right, Dad. You can't yell at everybody. But maybe you could teach people instead." Marcus paused, a box of pasta halfway to the cabinet. "What do you mean?" "Like at school. When kids ask me weird questions about Zara, I don't get mad. I just tell them the truth. Now half my class thinks she's the coolest person ever, and the other half wants to be biomechanical engineers when they grow up." Zara laughed, settling into her chair at the kitchen table. "Is that true?" "Totally true. Jessica wants to design robot legs, and Tommy wants to build spaceships, and Sarah Chun thinks you're like a real-life superhero because you moved to a whole different planet by yourself." Marcus felt his anger deflate, replaced by pride in his daughter and amazement at her wisdom. 8 years old, and she'd figured out something that had taken him months to understand. "You're right," he said, sitting down across from them. "Both of you. I'm sorry I keep getting so defensive." "You're protective," Zara said gently. "There's a difference, and I appreciate it, even if I don't always need it. Mom used to say that Dad's biggest weakness was caring too much about fairness," Emma added helpfully. She said it made him a good person, but also made him really stressed out. The casual mention of Sarah still caught Marcus off guard sometimes, but he learned to let Emma talk about her mother naturally rather than trying to change the subject. Zara had been particularly good about this, accepting Sarah as a natural part of their family history rather than seeing her as a threat or complication. "Your mom sounds like she was very wise," Zara said. She was. She would have liked you a lot. She always said the best people were the ones who made everything more interesting." "Do I make things more interesting?" Zara asked with a smile. "Definitely. Like last week when you showed us how to make that Kethri food. And when you taught me how to say hello to your sister when you called her. And when you fixed our broken tablet with those weird tools you have." Marcus watched this exchange with a warmth that had become familiar over the past few months. Zara and Emma had developed their own relationship, separate from, but connected to his relationship with Zara. They shared jokes he didn't understand, had ongoing conversations about topics that interested them both, and seemed to genuinely enjoy each other's company. It was different from Emma's relationship with Sarah, but it was real and meaningful in its own way. More importantly, it was helping Emma grow in ways that amazed Marcus daily. His daughter was becoming more curious about the world beyond Earth, more accepting of differences, and more confident in her ability to adapt to new situations. "Speaking of my sister," Zara said, pulling out her communication device. "She wanted me to ask Emma something." Emma's eyes lit up. "Really? What?" "She's working on a school project about Earth, and she wanted to know if you'd be willing to answer some questions for her. Through video call." "Can I, Dad? Please." Marcus looked at Zara, seeing the careful hope in her expression. He learned that her family meant everything to her, and the fact that they were interested in meeting Emma, even virtually, was clearly important to her. "Of course you can. When does she want to call?" "This weekend, if that works. It will be early morning here, late evening on Kether Prime." "That sounds perfect. Emma's always up early on weekends anyway." Emma bounced in her chair with excitement. "What should I ask her? What do Ketheri kids like to do? Do they have pets? Do they go to school like we do?" "I'm sure she'll be happy to answer all your questions," Zara said, her smile radiant. "She's been very curious about you ever since I started telling my family about you and your dad." "You tell your family about us?" Marcus asked, surprised. "Of course I do. You're important to me. They wanted to know about the humans who have become such a big part of my life." The simple statement hit Marcus harder than he'd expected. The idea that he and Emma had become a big part of Zara's life filled him with a happiness that felt almost overwhelming. He'd been so focused on how well Zara fit into their lives that he hadn't fully considered what their relationship meant from her perspective. "What do you tell them about us?" Emma asked, clearly delighted by the idea of being discussed by aliens on another planet. "I tell them that Marcus is the kindest, most thoughtful man I've ever met, and that he's raising the most remarkable daughter in the galaxy." Emma preened at this, while Marcus felt his face warm with pleasure and embarrassment. "I also tell them about human resilience," Zara continued, her tone becoming more serious. "About how you've both faced loss and difficulty with such strength and grace. About how welcoming you've been to someone very different from yourselves." "We're not that special," Marcus said, uncomfortable with the praise. "Yes, you are," Zara said firmly. "Do you know how many humans have treated me like a curiosity or a charity case since I've been on Earth? How many have seen my mobility aids and assumed I'm fragile or pitiable? You saw me as a person from the very first moment we met. That's just basic decency. Basic decency is much rarer than you think." Emma had been listening to this conversation with the intense focus she reserved for things she considered important. "Is that why you moved to Earth by yourself? Because people on your planet treated you differently too?" Marcus saw something flicker across Zara's expression, a moment of pain quickly suppressed. "Not exactly. Ketheri society is much more accepting of physical differences than most human cultures. But there were other reasons I wanted to leave." "Like what?" "Emma," Marcus warned gently, "that might be too personal a question." "It's all right," Zara said. "On Kether Prime, your life path is largely determined by your family status and your personal capabilities. As someone with a physical disability, certain paths were closed to me, regardless of my interests or abilities." "That's stupid," Emma said bluntly. "I thought so too. So I came to Earth, where I could become whatever I was capable of becoming." "And you became a biomechanical engineer," Emma said with satisfaction. "I did. And I met your father and you. So it worked out rather well." That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Marcus and Zara sat on the back porch, watching the stars. It had become their routine on evenings when Zara stayed for dinner, this quiet time to talk without Emma's enthusiastic interruptions. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said, settling back in his chair. "Of course." "Earlier, when Emma asked about why you left Kether Prime, there was something else. Something you didn't want to say in front of her." Zara was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the arm of her chair. You're very perceptive. It's okay if you don't want to talk about it. No, Ido. I want you to understand why being here with you and Emma means so much to me. She paused, gathering her thoughts. On Kether Prime, there's a cultural expectation that people with significant disabilities will partner with others who have similar challenges. The idea is that we'll understand each other better, be more compatible. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. But you didn't want that. I didn't want to be limited by other people's assumptions about what my life should look like. I didn't want to be told that I could only find happiness with someone who is also disabled, as if we were a separate category of being rather than individuals with our own preferences and desires. That's horrible. It's not malicious. Most Kethri genuinely believe they're being helpful, protecting us from rejection and disappointment. But it's still limiting. Marcus thought about this, trying to imagine what it would be like to have your romantic possibilities determined by other people's ideas about what you deserved or could achieve. Is that why you came to Earth? For more freedom to choose? Partly, but also because I wanted to prove to myself that I could build a life based on my own choices rather than others' expectations. And have you built the life you wanted? Zara turned to look at him, her silver gold eyes reflecting the porch light. I'm building it. Every day. The weight of her words settled between them, and Marcus felt something shift in his understanding of their relationship. This wasn't just about two people who enjoyed each other's company. This was about Zara choosing to build a life that others had told her was impossible, and about him and Emma being part of that choice. I'm honored to be part of it, he said quietly. You're not just part of it, Marcus. You and Emma have become the foundation of it. They sat in comfortable silence after that, watching the stars and thinking about foundations, about the different ways people could build lives together. Marcus found himself thinking about the future in a way he hadn't since Sarah's death, not just as something to endure, but as something to actively create. Zara, yes. When Emma asked about marriage earlier at the museum, were you completely horrified by the idea, or just surprised? Zara laughed, a sound like music in the darkness. Surprised. Definitely surprised. But not horrified. Good to know. What about you? Horrified or surprised? Marcus considered this carefully. The idea of marriage, of making a permanent commitment to someone again, should have terrified him. For 3 years, he'd been focused entirely on taking care of Emma and managing day-to-day survival. The thought of opening their small family to that kind of change and vulnerability should have sent him into a panic. Instead, it filled him with a quiet sense of rightness, as if this was the direction his life had been moving toward all along. Surprised, he said finally, but not horrified at all. Good to know, Zara echoed, and he could hear the smile in her voice. Inside the house, Marcus could see Emma's bedroom window, where she was probably reading under her covers with a flashlight, practicing her Kethri vocabulary or studying star charts. Tomorrow, she would video call with a Kethri child on another planet, bridging impossible distances with the casual confidence of a generation that took such miracles for granted. The thought filled him with awe and gratitude. Emma was growing up in a universe full of possibilities he couldn't have imagined when he was her age. She was learning that differences could be strengths, that love could cross any barrier, and that families could be built in infinite ways. Most importantly, she was learning these lessons not from lectures or books, but from living them, from having Zara as part of their daily life. She was seeing firsthand what it looked like when someone refused to be limited by other people's expectations, when someone chose to build the life they wanted rather than accepting the life they were offered. Thank you, Marcus said suddenly. For what? For choosing us. For choosing this life, this family. For showing Emma what courage looks like. Thank you for making me feel like I belong somewhere, Zara replied. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. As they sat together under the vast canopy of stars, Marcus thought about the incredible journey that had brought them all to this moment. A single father learning to love again, an alien woman building a new life on a foreign world, and an 8-year-old girl who saw possibilities where others saw problems. It shouldn't have worked. The odds against it were astronomical. But somehow, against all probability, they had found each other and created something beautiful together. Something that was greater than the sum of its parts. Something that felt like home. The crisis came on a Tuesday morning, 6 months after Marcus and Zara had started dating. Emma woke up with a fever and a cough that had Marcus immediately worried. After Sarah's death from cancer, he'd become hyper-vigilant about any sign of illness, terrified of the possibility of losing the only family he had left. By noon, Emma's temperature had spiked to 103 degrees, and Marcus was pacing the pediatrician's waiting room while trying not to panic. Zara had insisted on coming with them, despite Marcus's protest that she didn't need to miss work for what was probably just a routine childhood illness. "She's my family too," Zara had said simply, and Marcus had felt something shift his chest at her use of the word family. Now, watching Emma sleep fitfully in the examination room while they waited for test results, Marcus found himself struggling with familiar fears. The rational part of his mind knew that children got sick all the time and recovered quickly. The part of his mind that had watched Sarah waste away despite the best medical care available wasn't interested in rational thinking. "She's going to be fine," Zara said quietly, her hand finding his and squeezing gently. "Children are remarkably resilient." "I know. Logically, I know that. But after Sarah, you learn that sometimes the worst-case scenario actually happens. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen again." Marcus looked at her, grateful for her understanding. Most people, when he expressed these fears, tried to reassure him with statistics and platitudes. Zara acknowledged the reality of his experience while still offering comfort. "How do you do it?" he asked. "Stay so calm in situations like this." "Practice," she said with a sad smile. Kethri children with bone density issues often have complicated medical histories. I spent a lot of my childhood in hospitals and medical facilities. You learn to cope with uncertainty. The doctor returned with results that confirmed what they'd hoped. Emma had a fairly routine respiratory infection that would respond well to antibiotics and rest. She'd be feeling better within a few days and fully recovered within a week. Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. "Thank you," he told the doctor, his voice barely steady. "Thank you so much." As they prepared to take Emma home, she stirred and looked up at Zara with bleary eyes. "You stayed," she said, her voice hoarse from coughing. "Of course I stayed," Zara replied, smoothing Emma's hair back from her forehead. "Where else would I be? Some people don't like being around sick kids. They worry about catching it." Marcus felt his heart break a little at the matter-of-fact way Emma said this. He wondered who had taught her that lesson. What experience had led her to expect that people might abandon her when she needed them most? "I'm not going anywhere," Zara said firmly. "When people you love are sick, you take care of them. That's what family does." Emma's face brightened despite her fever. "We're family." Marcus held his breath, suddenly aware that this was a defining moment for all of them. Zara looked at him for just a second, her expression asking permission, before turning back to Emma. "If you want us to be," she said gently. "I would very much like to be part of your family." "I want that too," Emma said immediately. "Dad, is that okay?" Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes. "That's more than okay, sweetheart. That's wonderful." Over the next few days, as Emma recovered at home, Marcus watched Zara seamlessly integrate herself into their crisis routine. She brought soup that her Kethri grandmother's recipe, modified for human digestion. She read Emma's stories in both English and Kethri, teaching her new vocabulary words even while sick. She took turns with Marcus staying up at night when Emma's cough kept her awake. Most importantly, she seemed to understand instinctively what Emma needed when she wanted company and when she needed to rest, when she was genuinely unwell, and when she was milking the situation for extra attention. "You're really good at this," Marcus told her on the third evening, as they sat in the living room while Emma napped upstairs. "Good at what?" "Being a parent. Taking care of her." Zara was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the couch arm. "I've been thinking about that, about what it means to be a parent to a child who isn't biologically yours. And I realized that I love her. Not because she's your daughter, though that's how it started. but because of who she is. Her curiosity, her kindness, her determination to understand everything. I love her for herself. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. She loves you too. You know that, right? I hope so, but I wasn't sure. Children can be very good at being polite without actually caring. Trust me, Emma doesn't do anything out of politeness. If she didn't want you around, you'd know it. That's reassuring, Zara said with a laugh. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you want children of your own? Biological children, I mean. It was a question that had been nagging at Marcus for weeks, but he'd been afraid to ask it. The logistics of interspecies reproduction aside, he knew that many people had strong feelings about having biological children, and he didn't want to assume that Emma could be enough for someone who wanted that experience. I've never felt a strong drive to have biological children, Zara said thoughtfully. Kethari culture doesn't emphasize biological parenthood the way human culture does. We have a saying that translates roughly to children belong to the village that raises them, not to the genes that create them. So Emma is already my child in every way that matters. Biology is just one way to create a family. It's not the only way, and it's not necessarily the best way. Marcus felt something relax in his chest that he hadn't even realized was tense. I'm so glad you feel that way. What about you? Do you want more children? The question caught Marcus off guard. He'd been so focused on whether Zara would accept Emma as her own that he hadn't considered whether he might want to expand their family further. I don't know, he said honestly. I hadn't really thought about it. After Sarah died, I was so focused on taking care of Emma that I couldn't imagine having the emotional capacity for more children. But now I feel like I'm remembering what it's like to build something instead of just surviving. If you wanted to have children together, either biological or adopted, I think I'd be open to that. Even if they weren't entirely human. Marcus looked at her, seeing the vulnerability behind the question. Especially if they weren't entirely human. I can't imagine anything more amazing than raising children with you, no matter what they looked like or where they came from. Emma's voice drifted down from upstairs, calling for water, and their conversation was interrupted. But as Marcus went to take care of his daughter, he found himself thinking about the future in new ways. Not just as something to get through, but as something to create deliberately and joyfully. When Emma was fully recovered and back in school, the three of them settled into new routines that reflected their deeper commitment to each other. Zara started spending most nights at their house, keeping clothes and personal items there. Emma began referring to Zara as her bonus mom when talking to friends, a term that made Zara tear up with happiness every time she heard it. Marcus found himself thinking more and more about making their arrangement permanent, about asking Zara to marry him not just because he loved her, but because they had built something together that deserved to be celebrated and protected. The opportunity came sooner than he expected. Dad, Emma said one evening as they sat down for dinner, I have something important to ask you. What's that? My class is doing family presentations next month. Everyone has to talk about their family and what makes them special. That sounds like fun. I want to talk about how we're an interspecies family. But I want Zara to come with me to present because she's part of our family and the other kids should meet her. Marcus looked at Zara, seeing the surprise and pleasure on her face. What do you think? He asked her. I think that sounds wonderful, if your teacher is okay with it. She already said yes, Emma announced triumphantly. I asked her yesterday. She's really excited about it. But here's the thing, Emma continued, suddenly looking serious. Some of the other kids have parents who are married, and some have parents who aren't married but live together, and some have step-parents and half-siblings and all kind of combinations. Okay, but we don't really have a word for what Zara is. I mean, I call her my bonus mom, but what would other adults call her? Your girlfriend? That sounds too casual. Your partner? That sounds like a business relationship. Marcus felt his heart start to pound as he realized where this conversation was heading. What would you like to call her? He asked carefully. I would like to call her my stepmom, Emma said simply. But that requires you two to be married. Marcus and Zara stared at each other across the dinner table while Emma continued as if she was discussing the weather. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think you should get married. You love each other, you're happy together, and it would make our family official. Plus, then Zara would have the same legal rights as a parent if something happened to you, Dad, which Mom always said was important. The 8-year-old logic was flawless, and Marcus found himself laughing despite the magnitude of what she was suggesting. Emma, marriage isn't just about legal paperwork or having the right words for family presentations. I know that, but you don't want to marry her, right? And Zara wants to marry you. Marcus looked at Zara, seeing his own mixture of amazement and love reflected in her expression. Yes. Yes, I do want to marry her. And I want to marry him, Zara said softly, her eyes bright with tears. Very much. Good, Emma said with satisfaction. So, when are you going to propose? Emma. Marcus felt his face burning with embarrassment. What? It's a practical question. The family presentations are in 3 weeks. It would be really cool if I could announce that you're engaged. That's not how proposals work, Marcus said, though he was laughing. They're supposed to be romantic and private and carefully planned. Why? Emma asked, genuinely curious. You both know you want to get married. You both know the other person wants to get married. What's romantic about pretending to be surprised? Marcus looked at Zara again, seeing her trying not to laugh at his predicament. She has a point, Zara said gently. Are you serious? About having a point, or about wanting to marry you? Both. Either. Everything. Zara reached across the table and took his hand. Marcus Chun, will you marry me? The simple question, asked at their kitchen table over leftover spaghetti while their 8-year-old daughter watched with obvious delight, was perfect in its imperfection. It was real and honest and completely them. Yes, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, absolutely yes. Emma cheered and threw herself at both of them, creating a 3-way hug that lasted several minutes and left them all laughing and crying at the same time. Now I can tell everyone that my stepmom-to-be is an alien biomedical engineer who designs her own mobility aids and plays musical instruments that sound like water, Emma announced when they finally separated. That's definitely going to be the coolest family presentation ever. As Marcus looked at his daughter's radiant face and his fiancée's joyful expression, he realized that Emma was absolutely right. They were going to have the coolest family presentation ever. More importantly, they were going to have the most amazing family anyone could imagine. It wasn't the family he'd planned on having, but it was the family they'd chosen to create together. And that made all the difference. 1 year after their engagement, Marcus stood in the backyard of their new house, watching Zara teach a group of neighborhood children how to play a Kethri game that involved complex geometric patterns and a lot of enthusiastic jumping. Emma was in the center of the group, translating instructions and demonstrating techniques with the confidence of someone who'd been learning alien games for over a year. The wedding had been everything Marcus could have hoped for and nothing like anything he'd ever imagined. They'd held it in the community center with decorations that combined human and Kethri traditions in ways that somehow worked perfectly. Emma had been the maid of honor, insisting that she didn't want to be a flower girl because she was too old for that nonsense, but she'd very much like to be the person who officially welcomed Zara into their family. Zara's family had attended virtually, broadcasting the ceremony live to Kether Prime so her parents and siblings could participate. Kira, Zara's younger sister, had become Emma's long-distance best friend, and they had regular video calls where they taught each other games, shared stories about school, and practiced each other's languages. The house they bought together was bigger than the apartment Marcus had shared with Emma, with wide doorways and gentle ramps that made it fully accessible for Zara, while being subtle enough that most visitors didn't even notice the accommodations. It had a large backyard where Emma could practice with her telescope, a workshop where Zara could tinker with her engineering projects, and a big kitchen where they could experiment with fusion cooking that combined human and Kethri ingredients. Most importantly, it felt like home in a way that their previous living situations never quite had. It was a space designed for their specific family, accommodating everyone's needs and interests. Dad, Emma called out, waving him over to join the game. Zara says we need even teams, and we need one more adult. Marcus jogged over to join the group, which now included Emma, Zara, and 6 other children from their new neighborhood. The kids ranged in age from 6 to 12, and they'd quickly adopted Zara as the coolest adult in the area. She answered their endless questions about life on other planets, taught them simple Ketheri phrases, and had even started an informal after-school program where she helped them with science projects. "What are the rules?" Marcus asked, stepping into the geometric pattern drawn in chalk on their patio. "You have to jump from circle to circle while saying the multiplication table in Ketheri," Emma explained patiently. "But if you land on a green circle, you have to skip the next number, and if you land on a blue circle, you have to say it backwards." Marcus stared at the complex pattern of colored circles, each marked with symbols he couldn't read. "This seems extremely complicated for a children's game." "Ketheri children are very good at multitasking," Zara said with a grin. "It helps develop neural pathways for complex problem solving. It's actually really fun once you get the hang of it," added Jessica, one of Emma's classmates. "My parents can't do it all, but Emma's learning to do it without looking at the circles." Marcus watched Emma demonstrate, jumping from circle to circle while reciting multiplication tables in alien language. Her movements confident and precise. She made it look effortless, but Marcus could see the concentration on her face as she calculated each move. "How did you learn this so quickly?" he asked her during a break in the game. "Zara's been teaching me, but also Kira sends me videos of kids on Kether Prime playing so I can practice at home. She says I'm better at it than most Ketheri kids my age." The pride in Emma's voice was unmistakable, and Marcus felt his chest swell with love for both his daughter and his wife. Zara had given Emma something precious, the confidence that came from mastering something difficult, and the joy that came from being part of a larger community that spanned star systems. As the afternoon game session wound down and the other children headed home for dinner, Marcus found himself helping Zara clean up the chalk circles while Emma organized the game pieces. "You're really good with kids," he told Zara, not for the first time. "Have you ever thought about teaching?" "I have, actually. I've been talking to the school district about developing a cultural exchange program. They're interested in having me create a curriculum about life on other planets, but from a scientific perspective rather than just a cultural one." "That sounds amazing. Would it be a regular teaching position?" "Part-time to start. I keep my engineering work, but add a few hours a week of teaching. The best part is that it would be for all ages, from elementary school through high school. I could help kids understand that space exploration isn't just about rockets and technology, but about meeting new people and learning new ways of thinking." Marcus paused in his cleaning to look at his wife, struck again by her ability to see possibilities where others saw only challenges. "You want to change how humans think about aliens?" "I want to change how everyone thinks about difference," Zara said simply. "Humans aren't the only species that struggles with accepting people who are different. If I can teach children that difference is interesting rather than threatening, maybe the next generation will be better at building bridges." Emma's certainly learning that lesson. They both looked over at Emma, who was carefully packing the game pieces while humming a Ketheri lullaby that Zara had taught her. "She's learning more than that," Zara said softly. "She's learning that families can be created in infinite ways, that love isn't limited by biology or species, and that the most interesting life is one where you're constantly growing and changing." Those are pretty good lessons for a 9-year-old. Those are good lessons for anyone. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Marcus and Zara sat in their living room working on their respective projects. Marcus was debugging code for a new software application, while Zara was sketching designs for an improved version of her mobility aids. It was a comfortable domestic scene that still sometimes caught Marcus off guard with its simple perfection. "Marcus," Zara said, looking up from her sketching. "Yeah, I got a message from the Galactic Cultural Council today. They want to interview our family for a documentary about successful interspecies relationships." Marcus set down his laptop, giving her his full attention. "What kind of documentary?" "It will be part of a series they're creating to encourage more cultural exchange programs. They want to showcase families like ours to demonstrate that these relationships can work, that they could be beneficial for everyone involved. What would it involve? Interviews with all three of us, some footage of our daily life, maybe some scenes from Emma's school where I volunteer. Nothing too invasive, but they want to tell our whole story. Marcus thought about this, considering the implications. What do you think about it? I think it could be important. There are still a lot of humans and aliens who are hesitant about interspecies relationships. If our story could help even one family overcome those hesitations, it could help. Marcus agreed. What does Emma think about it? I haven't asked her yet. I wanted to know how you felt about it first. I think we should do it, Marcus said without hesitation. Our story is worth telling, and if it can help other families, then we have a responsibility to share it, even if it means giving up some privacy, having strangers analyze our relationship. Marcus considered this seriously. Their life together hadn't always been easy. They'd faced prejudice, logistical challenges, and the normal difficulties that came with blending families. But they'd also found joy, love, and a sense of purpose that Marcus had never imagined possible. I think the benefits outweigh the risks, he said finally. Besides, Emma would never forgive us if we turned down a chance to be in a space documentary. Zara laughed. That's very true. As if summoned by the mention of her name, Emma appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas. I'm supposed to be asleep, but I heard you talking about a space documentary, she announced. Are we going to be famous? Come down here, Marcus said, patting the couch beside him. We need to have a family discussion. Emma scrambled down the stairs and settled between them, her eyes bright with curiosity. Marcus explained about the documentary project, the potential benefits and drawbacks, and the fact that they need all three family members to agree before moving forward. So, we be like ambassadors? Emma asked when he finished. Representing Earth families to the galaxy? Something like that, Zara said gently. But it would mean having cameras in our house, people asking us personal questions, and having our story shared with beings across the galaxy. Emma considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important decisions. Would it help other kids who have alien family members? It might, Marcus said, and it might help other aliens who are thinking about starting families with humans. Then we should definitely do it, Emma said firmly. Mom always said that if you have a chance to make things better for other people, you take it, even if it's uncomfortable for you. Marcus felt his throat tighten at the casual reference to Sarah. Even 2 years after their marriage, Emma still talked about her birth mother regularly, incorporating Sarah's wisdom into their daily life. Zara had never tried to replace Sarah in Emma's memory, but had instead helped Emma see how the lessons Sarah had taught her could guide her through new experiences. Your mom was very wise, Zara said softly, and she raised a daughter who inherited that wisdom. So, we're going to do the documentary? Emma asked eagerly. Marcus looked at Zara, seeing his own resolve reflected in her expression. We're going to do the documentary. 6 months later, Marcus found himself watching the finished documentary with a mixture of pride and amazement. The filmmakers had done an incredible job of capturing their daily life, while also telling the larger story of interspecies families in the galaxy. The documentary opened with Emma's family presentation at school, where she confidently explained to her classmates how her family had been formed and why she considered herself lucky to have a Kethari stepmother. It showed Zara at work, designing medical devices that would help both humans and aliens, and Marcus at his computer, developing software that was being used in intergalactic communication systems. But the heart of the documentary was the quiet moments. Emma and Zara video calling with Kira, all three of them cooking dinner together, Marcus and Zara talking on their back porch while Emma practiced telescope astronomy in the yard. It showed a family that happened to be interspecies, rather than an interspecies curiosity that happened to be a family. We look pretty normal, Emma observed as they watched themselves on screen. We are normal, Marcus replied. This is just what a normal family looks like for us. The documentary ended with each of them speaking directly to the camera about what their family meant to them. Emma talked about how having a Kethari stepmother had made her more curious about the galaxy and more confident about her place in it. Zara spoke about finding acceptance and love in ways she'd never expected. Marcus talked about learning that families could be rebuilt after loss, that love could cross any barrier, and that the most important thing parents could teach their children was how to embrace rather than fear what made others different. Do you think it will help? Emma asked as the credits rolled. I think it already has, Zara said, checking her communication device. I've gotten messages from 12 different families today. Some are humans considering relationships with aliens. Some are aliens who want to move to Earth. And some are interspecies couples who want advice about having children. Really? Marcus asked, surprised by the quick response. Really? Apparently our story has been broadcast to over 200 planets, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Emma bounced in her seat with excitement. We're intergalactic celebrities. We're a family that other families can relate to, Marcus corrected gently, which is exactly what we hoped for. Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 3 years ago, he'd been a widowed single father, focused entirely on survival and taking care of Emma. The idea of falling in love again, much less with someone from another planet, would have seemed impossible. Now, he couldn't imagine his life without Zara. She'd brought joy, perspective, and possibility into their lives in ways he couldn't have anticipated. More importantly, she'd helped Emma grow into a confident, curious, compassionate young person who saw the galaxy as full of friends she hadn't met yet rather than threats to be feared. No regrets? He asked Zara as they settled into bed. About what? Any of it. Leaving your home planet, taking a chance on a single father and his precocious daughter, agreeing to be in an intergalactic documentary. Zara turned to face him, her silver gold eyes.